What is going on, YouTube? This is Acid Root. So I'm going to review the third album by rapper Scarface. Basically, this project is called The Diary, and it came out in the fall of 1994. So the thing about this particular project is this is Scarface as he was starting to break away from Ghetto Boys as far as that particular pitch kind of happened with it. Ghetto Boys lasted to about the early 90s or about the mid 90s as far as that particular pitch kind of goes. I don't know them as full blown well as I know like Scarface's solo stuff. But this is definitely some excellent type stuff here. Scarface started his career in like 1991 as far as that pitch can happen. There was a hit Ghetto Boys album that came out in the summer of 1991 that had the particular hit single on there. Had the particular hit single on there, Mind Playing Tricks on Me, which is a pretty awesome rap song just from like the early 90s. Definitely a pitch type song that's kind of before. Mind Playing Tricks on Me is definitely a revolutionary southern rap song that had to say in particular, especially for like the early 90s and pitches like that. I have to say Scarface was definitely one of the more revolutionary type ones. Folks like Scarface, Outkast, and folks like that. It's a little bit of Devin the Dude back in those early 90s days, some of those type pitches. I think Devin the Dude actually surfaced in like the late 90s, but this pitch is like Scarface, Outkast, there's a couple other ones like UGK, some of those type folks. A lot of big rappers that kind of, there definitely were some hit southern rappers that blew up in 1994 as far as that pitch kind of particularly happened with it. But this particular album is just the fact that Scarface was starting to break away from like Ghetto Boys, like I was saying. It's just a particular concept that this is a heralded album here. Definitely a classic. I was not expecting to give this album as high a score as I'm about to give. It's just kind of the concept. I kind of felt like maybe it was a little bit more. I mean, it definitely has vintage and more old school stuff. This album definitely has more vintage and kind of old school type sound on this particular project, but I would have to say it's a good enough concept to appreciate some of this. It's just a more revolutionary type project that was kind of a trendsetter and pitches like that. Very revolutionary, some of those type things. This would have to say this is the concept behind it. It was a trailblazer, did a lot of things correctly. Just kind of one, just like Tupac's early days, where Tupac's early albums were just kind of here and there, just within the pitch, like the sheer quality, just because they're so more kind of almost boom bap and just starting to flesh out the sound and lay down the train tracks as far as that particular pitch can happen. But I definitely feel like Scarface definitely incredibly improved later. I'd have to say albums like his 1997 album, which I forget what that one's called. Yeah, I don't remember what his 1997 album's called, but that's a pretty good album, I'd have to say. And The Fix, which I just reviewed earlier this month in May of 2024, was definitely a classic as far as that particular pitch kind of went along with it. So some definite excellent stuff here to kind of get. Scarface has a number of classic albums. I suspect that there will probably be more of these. I'll wind up giving like a 10 out of 10, I'd have to say, but it's definitely some good concepts. Pretty early album. For the most part, I'm not always a fan of albums that kind of came out before like The Chronic. This album didn't come out before The Chronic, but definitely in like the early stages of The Chronic as like things started to flesh out with G-Funk and some of these more type sounds that started to flesh out a lot more between like 91 and 96, some of those type pitches. I just would say I was surprised to give this album as high a score, but we'll get to that. Basically, there's two singles on this particular album, both of which charted pretty well, which normally Scarface is more of like a gold selling rapper as far as that pitching goes. He's kind of more in the hardcore sense, but this is definitely, the thing about this particular album is it's pretty damn gassy. I definitely appreciate the concept. It reminds me a lot of Brother Lynch Hung, the stuff that he was doing in 1994 and 1995, but the pitch, the particular pitch behind it is just that Scarface is a lot more of a storytelling type rapper. He has more stuff to say. He just is not quite as gory, not quite as horrorcore as far as that pitch goes, but it's just some excellent type stuff to kind of get here just because you get like this haunting kind of veneer about it, but it just has the concept of just kind of being just more civil in the aspect of how it does that. I just really appreciate the concept of just getting some of this stuff. Just really, it's a ghastly album. I just feel like this is the perfect album. This is definitely like the perfect little album to come out in like the fall of 1994 as far as that pitch can go. It's October 94 as far as that particular kind of happens, just because there's just so much grimness on here. It just really is like a perfect pitch. When you think of folks like Snoop Dogg's Murder Was the Case soundtrack, and you think of like Brother Lynch Hung that came out around this time between like the fall of 94 and the winter of 95, Scarface's album, you know, there just were some good pitches. Easy E was kind of doing a little bit of horrorcore, some of those type pitches, just some stuff around this particular time that had a lot of that particular sound just really excellently worked. And Scarface is no, I mean, just based upon his name, he's always been pretty haunting, I'd have to say, but this is just some excellent type stuff. So the first single was I Seen a Man Die. The first single was I Seen a Man Die. It's definitely a pretty excellent one. It's like a spooky and kind of ghoulish Autumn Hollows of a song, I'd have to say in particular. This is a more civil version of Brother Lynch Hung. I would definitely have to say Brother Lynch Hung's kind of hauntiness, and this is just an overall excellent type bop on here. Now, the thing about this particular production type fare of this particular album is just the fact that it's a lot more just not necessarily boom bap, but just more stark and minimalist type production. The production's kind of ooze in as far as that particular kind of goes with this. It's kind of the concept. It has some good stuff here, but it's not as full blown just like a serenade just within the aspect aspect of like the whole song, and just kind of is peppered in more so than like the aspect of just being well-meaning like that. But it's like I do appreciate the sound is because it's revolutionary. I mean, this is the sort of stuff that was kind of happening with '90s as they started to transgress past boom bap and some of those initial kind of more skeletal type productions. This is just the concept as this was starting to flesh out, especially for like a southern rap album. The South was not quite as dominant as it would be in the 2000s and the late '90s as far as that pitching goes. Outkast was still getting its wings. UGK was still kind of getting their wings, some of those type pitches, I'd have to say. So it's an excellent concept. This is a revolutionary, pretty song, I definitely had to say. Scarface was starting to separate from Ghetto Boys as far as that pitch goes, and this is just an excellent concept. That very haunting type song, great October type music that I get here. Most of this album's kind of like that. I'd say the second single, Hand of the Dead Body, is probably one of my favorite songs off this particular album, if not my favorite song off this particular album. Just a real excellent type one. Has Devin the Dude and Ice Cube on here. It's pretty good pitch to have Scarface get Ice Cube back in his prime years as far as that particular kind of went along with that. Brilliant Devin the Dude hook to some excellent type stuff. Devin the Dude's known for some pretty excellent hooks, just like on the song Fuck Faces, some of those type songs like that. I'd have to say Devin the Dude really nailed this hook. It's like a real glaring kind of red hot autumn haze of a song. I'd have to say in particular, this just has a beautiful hook. Like I was saying, this is just some up tempo bounce with like a leery kind of sheen about it. So it's just some excellent type concepts kind of get here. Damn near horrorcore, just without the concept of like the goriness. I would have to say just kind of the concept, just like some ghastly type music that just works extremely well. If you do like Brother Lynch hung, Snoop Dogg and It's More Murder was the case type days, some of those type pitches, I had to say this is a good, because it's definitely a good companion to some of those type sounds to kind of get here in particular. Just really works excellently well. I'd have to say just some real ghastly type stuff that has a lot of appeal. So there's 10 songs on this particular album. This album has 13 songs on it, but minus an intro, outro, and then like a song that's less than a minute in terms of the one-time interlude. I'd have to say that narrows it down to 10 songs. And out of those 10 songs, I wound up recommending to you 8.5. So there's really only one song I didn't recommend in some fashion. That's just the last song. And that's really just the last song, The Diary. So talk about The Diary real quick. That's just basically, The Diary is just basically kind of like a ghastly type tune that just didn't pull it off quite as well. This is like the only real true dud on here I'd have to say in particular. It was just kind of a screeching type one that just didn't work as well as it probably needed to, I'd have to say. This one, the few does, is the only real song that I had really some sort of full blown kind of problem with. This, the production type error is just not one that stacked up quite as much. But this album's going to get a 10 out of 10, like I was trying to say before. This is like a classic album here, definitely a pitch album out of the '90s, some excellent stuff like that. Just the veneer and just the overall aspect of this particular album just hit heavily, hits like a ton of bricks. I just would have to say it's revolutionary, did a lot of things right. Love the singles on this particular album. Just has a lot of excellent type stuff on here that just works real well. The approach, the execution, just so many things about this album are classic. It's the overall appeal, but it's just widespread, I'd say. So it's a good concept. But talk about some of these songs on here, like Mind Playing Tricks 94 is a real highlighted one. This is like a classic 90s hit from the one that was off in 1991. This is just a 1994 rendition of that. Pretty excellent stuff here. It's like a super kind of summer malaise and easygoing barbecue type vibes that this song particularly kind of gives off. And this is just like a good hangout type bop. Definitely appreciate this type of song. It's a real lazy type one. This works extremely well. Just the affable sense behind it. This is like, if like Will Smith's Summertime and songs like that, just from other 90s type fare, just a little bit. If like certain kind of 90s type fare is just too clean and bubbly for you, I'd have to say in particular, this is a pretty excellent type one to pick up here just within the aspect. It's just a real nice summer malaise that just works extremely well. I'd have to say just the concept behind it. Just some ghastly typeness that just has a lot of appeal. But the thing about it is Scarface kind of balances like the summer songs with just like some late autumn sheens as far as that particular kind of goes. There's some songs on here like One, Going Down, and Mind Playing Tricks 94 that just has some of that summer edge and just kind of city bopping, kind of just like hangout type fare as far as that particular kind of goes. Just some real nice malaise about some of these. This works pretty damn well. But there's definitely some haunting songs on here, but some of these do have some of that city hopping type haze of just picking up snacks at the gas station, smoking a swisher, some of those type pitches, just kick back and just residential type fare. Just works real well. Mind Playing Tricks is just a definite X. Mind Playing Tricks 94 is an excellent kind of lazy summer type song. One is another nice one for that. It's like a boppish kind of city traversing, like a good mood kind of Kickstarter of a song, I'd have to say. This is an in a good mood, definitely. This is definitely an in a good mood type Kickstarter, I had to say in particular. And this is just like a solid 90s dance bounce, I'd have to say. And this is just a pretty good residential hangout type hit. So it's definitely pretty excellent concept. This is definitely a pretty excellent concept to kind of get here, I'd have to say in particular. Just a real good One is just some real great summer malaise that had to say in particular just an excellent type concept. This is kind of a ladies song as well. I'd have to say both One and Going Down are some great ladies type songs just to kind of get within that pitch. Just some lazy kind of summer days. This, if you've ever seen the movie Office Space, it's an interesting aspect is because they pick a song off of here called No Tears. It's in the Office Space movie from 1999. But the fact of the matter is that Scarface actually did a song for that particular soundtrack. I forget what it's called. I think it's like Good Day to Be a Gangster, something like that. I forget the exact name of it, but that was a particular Scarface really had a lot to do with the particular Office Space movie. But there are some songs in here, some of these city hopping type ones, like Going Down One and No Tears, all feel like some summer type haze. It just feels perfect for like the work shift kind of mindset of just like some of those concepts. This is somewhat of a work shift type album, I'd have to say kind of more boppish type flair just within that sense. I mean, it's definitely some city hopping just within some summer blaze, but this reminds me of like late September type pitches as summer starting to die down, pitches like that. It's kind of the fanfare, like some workshop type hazes, stuff like that. Just some blue collar type stuff. This lazy kind of late autumn or late summer type days, pitches like that. I'd say there's at least four songs on here that kind of have that pitch. I'd say No Tears, Going Down, One, and Mind Playing Tricks 94 are all some pitches like that. They just have like some good unwind type music, just kind of lazy summer or late summer afternoons, I'd have to say, just within that relative haziness. So some good concepts. But yeah, Going Down is another nice one. This is another definite good lady song just within the pitch behind it. It's like a blurry kind of city hopping ladies tune, like I was saying. Pretty good concept for that in particular. It's like a basic kind of lazy autumn haze, definitely, I would feel like. This is just some residential everyday vibes that this song particularly kind of has, and this is just a great song to sip a brew to, I'd have to say. It's a pretty good concept. There's definitely some 40 ounce type music, just like with Brother Lynch Hung, he definitely has some 40-ounce type music. It's kind of a forgotten trade having like some 40-ounce type music and pitches like that is within the concept. I mean, there's folks like Easy E and Brother Lynch, some of those type folks, but it's an interesting concept. Kind of have Scarface do some of this because it definitely works pretty damn well. The almost song for me is The White Sheet. This is a nice one. I'm just kind of on the fence about it because I just question how many oftentimes I listen to it. It's a nice one, but it's just kind of the concept just here and there about it. I still feel like this album's going to get a 10 out of 10, of course, but this is the concept behind it. Most of these songs in here I probably would listen to in some particular fashion, but this one's just kind of one. It's the affability behind it. If you're not really smoking to this particular type song, it's kind of a rugged type song in particular, where if you're not really smoking towards it, it just doesn't really have the appeal like the aspect. I mean, most of these songs are kind of within that same fashion. This is a pretty rugged and just overall sheer type album. It's just kind of the concept that some of these just have a little bit more lazy malaise or just hauntiness about them. This is kind of one that's just kind of a boppish city hopping type one. It's like a regular moody evening autumn dredge of a song, I'd have to say, with like a decent bounce about it. This is definitely just a smoke one around the neighborhood type tune. But like I was saying, just the concept, if you're not really smoking pitches like that, if you don't really have something to smoke some of those type pitches, it just kind of feels just for like basic kind of snackage stuff like that. But if you're not really trying to get like some stuff at the gas station, some pitches like that, just picking up supplies or drinks, pitches like that, so I'm just getting some drive through, some of those type things, just some city bounce, it doesn't really have that much appeal. It's just not one to kind of listen to just when you don't have much to do. It's just kind of constant. You gotta have kind of something being in motion a little bit, just within the aspect kind of it. It's just not really a sitting still type song, I'd have to say. It was a good concept. I look after just within the pitch. It is pretty moody. I do appreciate this one. Just like most of this album in particular, just usually has like some summer dredge about it or some autumn dredge about it. It's either lazy days or kind of more haunting days, but I do appreciate the concept of most of these. This is just another nice one with the lyrics on here. Scarface definitely has some pretty ghastliness. This is a form of gangster rap. It's this kind of concept that kind of combines gangster rap with like horrorcore, kind of similar to like what Brother Lynch does. It's kind of in the concept of being more storytelling and Southern fried, I'd say. So it's a pretty good concept. But G's is a definite nice one. This one definitely reminds me of Brother Lynch Hung, I'd have to say. Definitely reminds me of Brother Lynch's ghoulishness, I'd have to say in particular. This is just like some late day activity, and this is just a trendsetter for like some Southern 90s bops, I'd have to say in particular. So it's a good concept. It should definitely take you back to like the Season of the Sickness album from 1995. Definitely has some pitches like that. Just the synths on this particular song are just pretty excellent, just the way that pitch kind of particularly goes. Excellent type stuff here to kind of get. Some real grim type stuff. Really appreciate the concept. Jesse James is another one that's just kind of like that. Some of these are some more haunting type ones. It's like a leering kind of creeping hazer of a song, I'd have to say. This is just like a crisp kind of cool day for some residential strolls, I would definitely feel like. And this is just like a get some snackage and kind of unwind type tune, I'd have to say. Definitely some nice ones just for like the hot. Definitely some nice ones just for like some autumn haze, just pitches like that. Just appreciating like October, November, September, some of those type pitches in particular. Just like the cooler weather, some of that type stuff. Just really unwinding, just getting stuff, picking up some brews, pitches like that, picking up some Budweiser, some of those type pitches, just stuff like that, getting like bagels and Chex Mix, some of those type pitches, pizza, gas station, some of that type stuff. And some real residential type fare, just appreciating like cooler weather. And then No Tears is another nice one. Once again, this was on the Office Space. No Tears was in the Office Space movie. I'd have to say it's like a woozy kind of typical day, kind of autumn malaise of a song. I'd have to say in particular, it's definitely got some workaday vibes about it. I had to say this is definitely like a drink of 40 ounce and kind of this is definitely like a drink of 40 ounce and appreciate the cool autumn air type pitch of a song. I'd have to say. Now, according to Spotify, this is the most popular song off the particular album. I'd have to say, in particular, has over 33 million plays. I'd have to say, pretty good concept for that. But I would definitely have to say, I appreciated Hand of the Dead Body and I Seen a Man Die Better. These are just, these have a lot of affability about them, has some commercial bite about them that just works pretty well, especially for like an autumn type pitch. I mean, I realize that most of the sounds pretty retro and it's not really that Spotify friendly, I'd have to say in particular, but it's just some good concepts. Now, No Tears was a part of the Office Space movie. I'd have to say, so it's a good concept to have that be recognized as kind of concept. I would say there's at least 3 songs out of the 10 on here that do have some excellent type concepts. So having some of that particular kind of recent casual pizzazz about them, I just would have to look after it. You just kind of have to have a little bit more of a taste for like 90s type flair and pitches like that, or just some of that type pitch. Now, obviously, if you grew up on these particular type songs and pitches like that, it's some excellent type fanfare here. But just for like the newer kind of casual type of appeal or pitches like that, just in trying to recommend some of this, I'd have to say this is kind of more here and there just with the concept. I mean, it definitely has that haunting sheen, but this really is like it's a kind of cogwheel of like an album that just was an initial kind of trendsetter for some of these pitches that would wind up affecting things later. This is definitely one of the entry type ones, just like Tupac in 91 and 93, or Outkast in 94 and 96, or like UGK in 94, 96, some of those type pitches. These are just the initial kind of train tracks being laid for some of those type pitches, just kind of concepts. So it's not as much of a full blown. Like I do feel like albums like The Fix and Made from 2002 and 2007 definitely have some of that revolutionary type appeal, just within the aspect of being like some good albums to kind of fuck with within semi recent kind of times. But this is definitely a revolutionary project even further. I'd have to say just some excellent type concepts kind of get here. Just did a lot for the 90s and pitches like that. Just really a trailblazer of a project and just overall has that classic appeal, I'd have to say. So it's a good concept. So basically, this album gets a 10 out of 10. Now, the social score, that's kind of tricky. I think I'll give this social score like an 8.75 out of 10. Not to say that it's a bad project, this is kind of the concept. I just question how well it would translate to today's times and pitches like that, just in particular. Definitely has some good songs in here. I feel like some of these city hopping type ones, they're just in a more retro type sense. The production is pretty dated for the most part. Not to say it's dated in like a horrid way, but just kind of the concept. It just compared to stuff that's even from like 1998 or 2003 or something. It just really kind of somewhat shows its age here. It's a good concept. It definitely has a lot of good things about it. It's a pretty classic in term. It's definitely pretty classic in terms of impact and hauntiness. I'd have to say in particular. It's just kind of the concept that it is a pretty retro album. I just would have to say in particular. So it kind of has some of that here and there. I do recommend some of these songs for city hopping type fairs. Some good lazy kind of late summer kind of ladies type. Some good kind of late summer ladies type tunes to kind of get in particular, and just some good crisp kind of strolling around type autumn music just for some pitches like that, just picking up snackage and smokage and pitches, some of those type things that I have to say, and some good singles, a few good hooks on here. There's some good hooks on here too. I definitely feel like Hand of the Dead Body has a pretty good hook. I would also have to say that Going Down has a pretty good hook. There's just some pitches like that. Mind Playing Tricks on Me is a pretty nice one. So there's just some good pitches that it does have some affability. Scarface has some surprising, somewhat commercial bite on here. It's just kind of concept that's just here and there, just with like the retro type feel. So that's a good enough concept. But 8.75 social. In terms of the future, like Scarface is kind of somewhat retired. He has put out at least a couple projects as recent as 2017 and pitches like that, but he kind of retired at least 2 or 3 different times. Once in 2002, once in 2008, once in 2015. So it's just kind of the concept. We'll just have to see about some more of these, but there are way more Scarface projects to get to. I'm definitely going to get to some more of these, but this is a classic. Just being able to say, definitely have to say about the impact of this classic seminal kind of 90s album, especially in Southern hip hop and horrorcore and pitches like that. I'd have to say, so this is recommendable to a pretty high extent. I would have to say that this is a great one to fuck with for, especially for early 90s type fare.